Welcome to the talk show Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. The goal of this show is to provide a learning experience to people of all ages, with guests from various fields in academics, a wide range of industries, and insight into the many forms of art, athletics, and entertainment. We hope you enjoy the show. Writer of The Golden Girls, Stan Zimmerman is our special guest today. Stan will talk about his career in writing as well as his experiences working with comedy legends.
Stan Zimmerman, welcome to Life Stories with Marc Hoberman.
Thank you for having me.
A true pleasure. Stan, when did you first realize you had a gift for any kind of writing? And is it true you started at age 10 in your own television network in your bedroom?
That was my big professional beginning, but I actually started at age 7.5 when I got into Cranbrook Theater School, even though I was under their age limit. And they did some really corny plays that I just, as a 7.5-year-old, it was just beneath me. So I decided to rewrite them without telling them. And I would go on stage and do different costume things or add little jokes. And it got huge laughs. And that's when I knew I had to be in this business. So I started then. But since I wasn't out playing sports, I was in my head, in my imagination, in my bedroom, where I did what every kid does. They create their own television network. And I literally scheduled 7 days a week against then the three major networks. And I found that if there was a TV show that got canceled that I liked, I would put it on my network naturally. Or I was in love with Lily Tomlin, and I felt we needed to see her on a weekly basis. None of these once-a-year variety specials. I need to see her every week. And so I gave her own variety show, which I was lucky enough to tell her years later when we were working together.
That's got to be a dream come true. And I'm glad that you started at 7.5, not 10, because when I saw 10, I figured by then most kids are has-beens. So I'm so glad that it was 7.5 and that you had your own network. That's just how amazing that you had her on your network when you were between the ages of 7 and 10. And then you could tell that later. That's a full circle moment right there.
Well, when you get to be older, you have a lot of those full circle moments. Those dreams that I had have luckily come true many, many, many times.
Yeah, that's truly a blessing. When you write, you always get, as an English teacher, I know this for a long time, you keep getting better when you write. But even now, what do you do to consistently hone your craft?
I do actually what I was taught when I was 7.5 at Cranbrook Theater School. They said, go out and watch people, observe. And that was such a great lesson at the very beginning of my career in my life to just do as a human being. And I think that's what's made me so sensitive and just take in other people and why I can write, especially for women. There are people that just everybody. So my writing partner and I would often go at the beginning of our career and just sit in malls and watch people. And we would do their dialogue, what we thought they would be. So it really, and it also has gone into the way I look at things whenever I have a problem. I put myself in the shoes of other people and like, how would they feel? And I've kind of just used that as my mantra, a way of thinking, or my statement of how I live my life.
I know in the beginning, besides honing your craft, you talked about writing and, you heard people laugh and you knew that was for you. Is there a reason why you chose comedy? And I know we'll talk later about some things you've done that have not included comedy, but what made that your go-to writing style?
I think I was always a funny kid. And I think being awkward and an outcast and being made fun of kind of put me on the sideline to watch people. And I think even like when I would, when you go to class for the first day of school and they would say you could pick any seat, I always picked in the back, in the corner by the door, because I wanted to see everything. I wanted to watch everything. So I was an observer. And I just, my father would say I saw life through rose-colored glasses. And as a kid, I didn't know what that meant. And he actually bought me some purple lens glasses. And as my mother said, I came out of the womb laughing. So I think it was just a part of me. I find the humor in things, and that helps me get through some really tough times.
Well, you bring up a tremendously, unfortunately, relevant topic. When you and I went to school, bullying was you're fat, you're ugly, you're stupid. That was bad enough. But now with cyberbullying and all these other things, but you seem to have seen the light through that. How did you deal with that kind of bullying and being called names and things of that nature?
I locked myself in my room and went through my imagination, and that saved me. And just dreaming of a house in the Hollywood Hills, and now I'm living house in the Hollywood Hills,
Right.
and doing stuff in New York. And luckily, your imagination can take you places outside of that. But to be honest, yes, I did think of ways of ending my life.
Mm,
I did not want to go to school the next day and to be spit on and to be
mm,
felt less than, and that was really tough. But I went from like seventh, eighth, ninth grade being bullied, and then all of a sudden I went to a new school, high school, and I did change my hairstyle. I had a big fro, believe it or not. This was all curly at one time. I think my hair just got tired and just straightened out naturally. But all of a sudden, I was recognized for um, my abilities. And also going to that summer theater camp was also a blessing, because I would be the most popular kid at school, at the summer theater school. At regular school, I was not. So it was very hard in my mind to figure out I'm the same person. Why am I liked in one place and hurt in another? And I just kept focusing on, well, they really see the real me, the funny me, the creative me. So I leaned into that. And luckily, I had a very supportive mother, who, without her, I don't think I would be here doing what I'm doing.
wow, that's so powerful. Thank you for sharing that. In schools and outside in business now, I do a lot of anti-bullying workshops and camps and corporations. And the corporate bully is the same as he was when he's 11. He's just a little bit heavier and 30, 40 years older. So I really did not know anything about this from your background. So I have to ask you, have you ever given any thought to, or have you written anything with some kind of anti-bullying theme, or a character you created who was a bully, or a character who stops people from bullying? Has that ever entered your mind?
Oh, yes, it's in my suicide note play. It's called Right Before I Go, which was the first play that I ever had published, which is very dramatic. But about, I think it's going on now like 11, 12 years ago, a very close friend of mine died by suicide. And as a comedy writer, I didn't know how to process it. I knew I was mentioned in his note. I couldn't get the note from the person that he sent it to. So I went to other notes of famous people and not so famous people and started collecting them to see if I could find the answers of why he did what he did. And that's how I came up with the idea for the play, and created kind of like in the vein of the vagina monologues, with four actors sitting on stools reading the play so that it could be put up to raise money and awareness and provoke conversation pretty quickly, like in a day or two, or you could spend a whole month. And in the play, there are many, many notes, unfortunately, from little girls that were bullied and died by suicide. And one did it, and she, I don't know how graphic you want to get here, but she hung herself by the school bus stop so
Mm.
that the kids would see. And in the note, she told her mother, like, let people know they did this to me. And there was a horrible note in there, which people can find online, about a girl that held up cards in her note. And she was, bullied and beat up at school, and thrown in a ditch, and they threw bleach on her. I mean, it was really terrible. And then there's another note. I think there's three bullying notes in there, actually, of a young gay boy who was just yelled at school, awful, awful names. And interestingly, TRW Plays is the company that licensed it, and they're having me do a school edition. And so I took out all the swear words, except I did leave the one derogatory word that was yelled at me and at other kids like me, with the note that if they needed to change that, I gave them another word. But the power of that is, I think, something important, and it's meant to shock, but it's all real. So I'm very much in that world of helping kids deal with it, talk about it. And for some reason in our culture today, being bullied is seen as powerful. And I don't understand that, being mean and cruel. I was taught empathy was a good thing. So I'm hoping through my work, and people say the commonality in it is that there's always a heart in it. You can feel the heart. And even if I'm directing someone else's work. And so I hope people get that. And that's why I keep doing plays and keep writing and directing and producing.
That's amazing. I have to tell you, I wrote a book about overcoming adversity, and as a teacher, I couldn't agree with you more that the gold is not in the presentation; it's the reaction to the Q&A that follows. So it's so interesting to me that you should say that. So it's great to have you as a guest, and I always say thank you for being a guest. But now I have to turn a little bit into the great saying, "Thank you for being a friend." I would sing it, but I don't want you to turn off the show. So
I can't sing either. So I can dance up a storm, but singing not my thing.
We can whistle it. Yeah, later on we can whistle it. So
I've never karaoke. So
that I've done. I love that actually.
Never.
What was it like to write for lack of a better term, the queens of TV comedy, the Golden Girls?
Well, I was very young, so I was extremely nervous and scared, and it was our second big job, but obviously there was an enormity to this one because I grew up watching three of those ladies, and I had just seen Estelle Getty just take Broadway by storm in Torch Song Trilogy, and I couldn't believe that we were there writing for them. Of course, in season one, at the beginning, nobody knew that it was going to be a hit. The traditional way of thinking that like nobody would watch a show with four older characters and women, and so it was super cool to watch it rise in the ratings and then be there when it became kind of the massive hit that it was, not knowing that years later we'd still be talking about it and I would be going to conventions and Golden Girls cruises and different events. But I love going out and meeting the fans of it. And I love hearing stories because as a writer, people don't really know me by my face. If you're actors, you get approached. But as a writer, it's so cool to be able to, people find out that I was there, to hear the stories of what it meant to them, or a lot of people watched it with their grandmothers or have, really emotional, cool stories. And for a writer, that's just amazing to hear.
Oh, for sure. It's a classic. Can I ask how old you were when you first wrote for the Golden Girls?
No, you can't.
So
early 20s.
I was about to say, let's pretend we're going to say early 20s. So
yeah, let's just go with that. But I mean, It was right out of college, so it was shocking to have that kind of job and be like the first one of our group in LA that was working, had a paycheck, and it was very exciting, obviously, to be there and to be on the stage watching an audience laugh on one side and then seeing these classic women say your words. And I know online people often write in the chat rooms, oh, they were so great at ad-libbing. They didn't ad-lib anything. They read our lines verbatim. But they were such good actors that it seemed so natural. It seemed like they were ad-libbing. So it's a testament to them, and God bless them, because unlike any other show I've ever been involved with, I would say almost every interview that those ladies did, they always said the first thing that made that show successful was the writing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, but you all, if they couldn't sell a joke, we just had to start over because they were the best of the best.
95% of the movies I've seen, the TV shows I've seen, people I've interviewed, maybe 3% I've seen thank the writers. And I always say, yeah, this guy's a great actor. You can't take that away from him. But, if a fourth grader gave him something to read, would he still be great? So it's so classy and not surprising at all that they thank the writers. But you've done a ton of writing. You wrote for a Very Brady Sequel as well as Gilmore Girls. And
we actually wrote both Brady movies, but because of the Writers Guild kind of archaic rule, they only allow, I think, 3 entities to be credited. And because we came out at the very end when they were casting the movie, and then all throughout the filming, we were there changing lines. But if you don't change the structure of the script, you don't get credit for it. Wow. So we were stuck with, because they had already scouted every location. So they would say, okay, we're shooting today, at the Brady School, so in the auditorium. You can change anything within that set, and we did, word-wise, but you have to be in the auditorium. So we just went to town, and luckily we were hired for a 2-week polish, and we just fell in love with Betty Thomas, the director, and she fell in love with us. And she was like, you guys totally get what I want to do. And we just kept going further out in a very fun, demented way. And it was one of the most successful TV shows to film versions that I think has ever been done.
Well, I love hearing the ins and outs. And that's something, of course, I never know. But, you mentioned, we talk about your amazing prowess with writing, but you also direct an enormous amount. Also, you directed a very different version of the play, The Diary of Anne Frank. What can you tell our viewers about that project?
So that started in 2018. I was very upset about the child separation at the border from the last administration. And again, that was cruelty coming through. It was done for the purpose of hurting people. And then I woke up one morning early to a CNN report talking about a Jewish woman in LA who was hiding a Latina mom and her 2 daughters because the mom's husband was deported by ICE. And in my head, I thought, we're literally living in the times of Anne Frank in Los Angeles. And then a light bulb went off. I went, wait a minute, what if I did the Diary of Anne Frank play, not change a word of the script, but cast everyone in the attic with Latinx actors? So I wanted to make the connection and get people talking about what are the similarities? What are the differences? And my vision of the play really is about a group of Latinx families in hiding, reading the script, and then suddenly they become the characters. So it goes back to they put themselves in the shoes of the people that were in the attic. And they all start in grays and blacks and whites, and then suddenly it pops out of color, the scripts disappear, I introduce lights and sound. So that's a little Wizard of Oz damage that I have there. But that always fascinated me as a kid. I was like, when she opened that door and it was color, I was like, my mind was blown. So we've been doing that play off and on since 2018. We've done it we started in 50-seat theater. We're now been doing it in a 268 theater, the Colony Theater in Burbank. We went to a theater festival in Vancouver. And again, the talkbacks we've done have been fantastic. We had a 92-year-old Holocaust survivor speak, and we've been focusing mostly on getting school groups in, because I found out that it's no longer required reading to learn about the Diary of Anne Frank in schools anymore. So kids are forgetting about what the Holocaust is. And so and now that most survivors are unfortunately passing away, it's up to us, the next generation, to tell that story.
So powerful. So powerful, so grateful that you're putting it out there. And yes, they've been banning so many books, and they're forgetting about the Holocaust. Some of them never knew it even existed. So keeping it current and out there for educational purposes.
Someone that lived through it. And when she looks at the students in the audience and says, I was your age when I had to go into hiding, and I couldn't move at all when the sun went up to the sun went down. All I could do was sit in a chair and read a book.
Ooh.
Think of that. The kids are just like, they can't believe when they think about how could they survive that.
Yeah, and that definitely resonates with young people. I have found that as great as a teacher people could be, great teachers out there, I've worked with many of them. The right speaker, the right time, that resonates with kids. 15 years later, they won't remember my lesson, but they'll remember that time that guest speaker came in. So grateful that you're doing that work. We had a major loss, obviously, in Hollywood some time ago, rather recently. I was always a huge Leslie Jordan fan. And what a loss to the industry. You worked with him on Silver Foxes, along with George Takei, Bruce Valanche, I think Sherry O'Terry, and Melissa Peterman. What was it like working with him?
We did just, I only worked with him. We did a reading of it, the very first reading, up in my living room. I have kind of a big living room. Right. And I like to think of it as a salon. And I always try out my plays or other works up there. And I invite people over to watch, and we have a little wine and we watch it. And so we were doing the first reading of it with Leslie Jordan. I didn't know Leslie or George Takei. I literally cold called them and said, here's who I am, a few of my credits I threw around. And I said, we wrote this new piece, Silver Foxes. And instantly, both of them were like, what day, what time, we'll be there. There was no script. They just knew the importance of telling a story about older gay men that haven't heard their voices, and how did they survive. And so it was kind of a gay men's Golden Girls in that vein.
Right.
And so he was very supportive of it. Unfortunately, he passed before we did the very first live production of it in Dallas that my friend Michael Urie from Ugly Betty directed. And we had a great sold out run of it. And now we're talking to a few theaters of what the next step is with it. Of course, I'd like to see it get to New York. And it was just an amazing experience. But it's something about being persistent. And, you know, in this business, you get a lot of doors slammed in your face and a lot of no's. So for me, it's always figuring out, okay, how can I, you know, we initially wrote it as a TV series and just got met with like, the characters are too old, no one will relate to them. And I kept yelling Golden Girls, but that didn't seem to do it. So that's when we turned it into a play. And that way I can put it up myself. I don't have to wait for a studio or a network to give me the go ahead.
Right. Well, that's perseverance. That's so important. So, Stan Zimmerman, thank you for joining us today and sharing your awesome experiences as a writer, director. A special thank you for sharing the bullying stories that were personal to you. To the viewers, don't forget to watch us on E360 TV, available on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. EST, available on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire. Remember to follow us on social media, Life Stories with Marc Hoberman on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and of course, our YouTube channel. Stan Zimmerman, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. To contact Marc, email him at info@lifestorieswithmarchoberman.com or visit him on social media through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman.